Hey everybody, I'm Josiah,
I'm Eric.
and this is Project InSite.
That's right. All right, so there's this statistic on the internet that says 70% of all teenagers, when they graduate high school and leave their home, they stop attending church. So that's an alarming statistic. So Josiah and I were talking about it. He says he resonates with that, even to the tune of he is one of those statistics.
Absolutely.
So Josiah, tell us your story. What's up?
So first and foremost, I was very much raised in a Christian home. My dad and mom are both pastors.
Okay.
And we were very much raised in a church which we weren't allowed to miss a Wednesday or a Sunday. We weren't even allowed to spend the night with kids who they didn't know that their parents weren't saved.
There you go.
So, I mean, we were in a very Christian environment. And when I started going to school, the first time I was in a non-Christian environment is actually when I went to high school, right?
Okay.
But to kind of get into essentially why, or the basis, the foundation of why I turned away, it all started when I was about 13. When I was 13 years old, I found out that I could switch out my parents' router with a wireless one, and it came with a free little dongle that I could put in my computer upstairs. And so at about 13 years old, I had unfiltered internets. Yes. So as you can understand, the temptation is just overwhelming for a 13-year-old with the full power of the internet at his fingertips, much like today's youth.
Okay.
So I wanted to draw that parallel because I understand what it's like to grow up not only with the internet in today's age, but being able to do and see whatever you want pretty much at any time, much like today's youth.
So even though you have leading from your parents for spiritual guidance, you in secret are flooding your eyes and your heart and your soul with pornography, with the lust of the flesh, and just feeding the flesh, which is dying, killing, I guess, your spirit and your drive to seek God.
Yep. So in so many words, I was able to download whatever movie I wanted, able to see anything I wanted, and it didn't really get to anything like pornography until I was actually much older.
Okay.
But I started with just movies and things like that, and that was honestly what I call my lure number one, the hook that started this whole process of bringing me away from the things of God. And that was not guarding the content in which came into my life. Like, it's watching all those college movies about, you know, people partying and the girls and the guys and just what the fun it looked like. And it was very much creating a grass is greener environment in my life because it looked like so much fun, but yet here I was every day going to church, doing the same thing. I felt like it wasn't the same fun. They looked like they were having a lot of fun. I was just kind of having fun. Like I enjoyed my time, but I wasn't having that kind of fun.
So you had essentially a longing, a sense of belonging with the world that you wanted to grasp, rather than a longing to be part of the family of God or to seek God and to know Him.
Right. And so then it kind of went into what I call my lure number two, which was not setting myself apart. Okay. So what I did was during this time, when I went to high school, I immediately started playing football and I started hanging out with the more popular crowd and different things like that. And I would even go to some parties and things like that. I didn't really drink or do a whole lot of those things because, one, my dad stayed up every night until I got home. Pro tip for the parents. But he would literally wait up, and so I knew that I was going to see my dad face to face. So it really kept me away from doing a lot of the things that a lot of kids are doing in high school today. Yeah. But I still really wanted to.
So you had a structured system of built-in accountability that really was a restraint that kept you from veering off course.
Yeah, and so, but I honestly really wanted it. So you mix one, not guarding myself with all the content I'm watching, but then two, you add in just the friends that I'm now surrounding myself with, and it's just, and even though on the surface I look like the kid that, you know, the typical preacher's kid that, you know, is going to church and looks like they have it all together, but deep down inside, I really just wanted to be part of the world and just have tons of fun and have no accountability.
Your behavior looked like it was in line, but your heart was far from I guess, a close connection with God.
Well, I don't want to say far from. But
Okay.
okay. But that was generally leading all the way up until the point in which I left and went to college. That was the background, right? So I had, on the surface, I had done everything right, but deep down and on the inside, I had all of these things that I really wanted to do. So fast forwarding now to college time, right? So I get to college and I'm now surrounded by people who can do and do whatever they want. There's nobody telling you you can't. There's nobody waiting up for you.
Dad's not at home waiting on you to come home, looking at his watch, sniffing your breath, or
there's absolutely none of that. I mean, in some places you might have a friend group or something like that checks and balances, so to speak. But you would have to create that environment, and it'd be very easy for you to blow it off because all you got to do is stay with friends. Nobody's out looking out for you at that point. You can have a friend group, and it's all about setting yourself apart with that. But you really want to stick with a group, right? And that's when I talk about not setting yourself apart. Everything that I was doing, all of that not guarding, all of that not setting myself apart, now was just magnified. And so I went wildly out. I started drinking, I did whatever, I smoked whatever, I partied, and I did it for probably 3 or 4 years. Just whatever we wanted, free for all.
So whereas before your dad was a restraint and trying to keep you in line, now you're bonding with friends who not only don't offer that accountability, they actually probably encourage the opposite.
Exactly, that camaraderie, that whole oh, did you see what so-and-so did the other day? Mm-hmm. Right? But in the midst of it all, God can find you. And my turning point, okay, the part that made me realize that I was kind of going down a path was right after spring break, right? A full week of all of the things you don't want your kids to do. I came back to where I was staying, and I was sitting out back, and we had these 2 plastic Adirondack chairs and a little pool, and I was sitting out there, and my roommate was actually already sitting out there, and I joined him, and it was our 2 chairs. We called them Lich and Zoller, which is actually chill and relax backwards. But I go out there and I sit down with them, and I'm thinking to myself, we got to change something. This is like Groundhog Day. Every day is a party. Every day we drink, whatever. And it's just it was just, at that point, it was starting to feel empty. I even had a dream that I needed to do something different. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't like I needed to go to church or anything like that, but that was exactly what happened. I sat down, and without really talking much, we would just kind of banter about how the spring break went, because we went to 2 separate places. And there was a long pause, and he looks over at me, and he goes, "We really should start going to church." And it really hit home with me, because it was I knew I needed something, but I didn't know what it was. And when he said it, it was I need God in my life. And that's what we started. We got a group together. We started going back to church, and that led to me, going to church with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and then we joined a life group, and things happened that ultimately brought me all the way back to this point. But I say all that to say this: had I not had a foundation, I probably never would have made that turn, or it would have been increasingly difficult for me to make that turn. But if you're not guarding yourself, if you don't have that, what I call my 2 lures, which is not setting myself apart and not guarding the content in which comes into my life, it is easy to fall into that trap. So I totally understand the 70% of teenagers today that make those decisions, because I made them. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's the big takeaway. Those are the 2 things you need to do in order to help prevent, but just stay in God, stay in the Word, and actually seek ye first the kingdom of God. And that's truly the only way you're not going to just become part of the world.
Pretty excellent. One thing I would say, wonderful testimony. So anybody out there that you fall into that statistic, maybe you've graduated high school, maybe you quit high school and you left the nest and you're out living in the world. you know, if you profess to be a Christian, at one time you gave your life to God, you prayed for Jesus to come into your heart. I think of Romans 10:9. It says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. And, you know, so think back to when you first invited God into your life, where you first surrendered your life to God. Maybe that's not something you should have done. That's something that you do. Something that you do daily. So right now, if God is convicting you of something, hey, this is an idol in your life. Just lay it down. Lay it down and choose me instead. Respond to that.
Yeah.
Just like your buddy said, hey, maybe we should go to church. And you responded.
Yeah. And find yourself that group that you can start setting yourself apart. Maybe it's just going to church. Maybe it's finding a friend that you know goes to church. But generally just having that connection, that's how I started coming back, because we got a group of friends, because I don't know that I ever would have went to church without that group. But anybody can do it. You can get involved. You can call people. There's ways to turn it around. So
there's hope for you. You can do it.
Word.
All right. I'm Eric.
I'm Josiah, and this is Project InSite.
What are you doing?
Okay.
It's annoying, like every time. Equally annoying. That's okay. Good. You have the spiritual gift of annoying. I'm glad you're using it. Don't bury that talent.
Okay.